Welcome to Cybersecurity Sense, a weekly podcast providing updates and insight into the latest in cybersecurity. Brought to you by LBMC Information Security. Now, here's your host.
Hello again. This is Bill Dean, Senior Manager here at LBMC Information Security. We are still at the Institute of Internal Audit's seminar that we're putting on today. And I actually have the opportunity to speak with Mark Burnette that just did a phenomenal talk. So Mark, as most of you know, he is a shareholder here at LBMC Information Security. Been here about 7 years, I think. Yep. And so I have the pleasure of working with Mark quite often. And actually, Mark, before we even get into this, I just want to tell you, we've worked together for a period of time. I think that's the first time I've seen one of your talks, and you just do a great job.
Oh, thanks for saying that, Bill.
And I really like the title of this talk. And, you know, as we've spoken, I'm going to try to use some of this material moving forward. So the talk was titled, Dear President Trump, you know, how to secure the U.S. And I've really learned a lot, and I really like how you approached it. Give us a little background on kind of what inspired you to write that and kind of how that evolved and how it worked out.
Sure, Bill. Be glad to. You know, we talk in security a lot about we all wish we had access to senior executives. And so we prep ourselves for our 30 seconds of fame. So if we're lucky enough to be stuck in the elevator with the senior executive and they said, hey, Mark, you know, what's on your mind? We'd be prepared to quickly advise them and give them some guidance without getting into the whole pings, packets, and ports and gory detail that a senior executive didn't want to hear. So during the most recent presidential election, I thought to myself, hey, if I got a chance to talk to the incoming president, if for some reason that person reached out to me, what would I say? And I jotted down some things that were really important to me that I felt strongly are things that a leader of the free world could do to improve cybersecurity posture, not only of the country, but of organizations, companies, and individuals as well. And so I had these thoughts, Bill, captured, and then Donald Trump won the election.
That was a surprise, wasn't it?
And so when he won, I thought, you know, this guy's really digitally connected. So what if I write him down in an open letter? And so I did that. I wrote down my thoughts in kind of a blog-style open letter, and I just posted it on LinkedIn, you know, so that my friends and people in my network would see it. And it began to get some comments and things like that. And, you know, it's a lot of fun when you do that, because LinkedIn is a great way for you just to have some healthy dialogue and debate and get some insights from others who are passionate about a topic. And as we had that conversation, our marketing team said, you know, Donald Trump really likes this whole Twitter thing, and you know, we think it's going to be a big deal, by the way, at some point.
I think we're there.
And so they tweeted it to him in hopes that perhaps maybe it would get on his radar. Now, I wish I could tell you that the next part of our conversation was that he reached out, and the next thing you know, I was riding in the elevator with Donald Trump.
Or in the Oval Office.
That isn't the case, Bill. But the point is that it did foster some really healthy conversation in our security community about the types of things that need to be happening at the national level to help address the cybersecurity issues in the United States.
The letter, is it still available? So could the listeners go and find it and maybe read it for themselves?
Yeah, it's still out there on LinkedIn. Uh-huh. If they were to go to my LinkedIn profile, it's freely available. What I didn't realize, by the way, when I posted it, when you post an article on LinkedIn, it's typically available to anybody who has accepted a friend request with you. But the LinkedIn editors actually go through and they read many of the articles that are posted, and they put together a weekly digest, an email of articles they think are of interest, and they send it out to all the LinkedIn subscribers, anybody who's asked for the copy of the digest. And so what ended up happening, Bill, was my letter made it into this digest, and all of a sudden I started getting inquiries and friend requests and comments from people around the world that I've never met and probably never will meet in person.
That's great. And so, you know, there were 4 major areas that you wanted to address, and we want the listeners to go and actually read it. So just kind of tease them a little bit, kind of explain what you were covering without getting into too much detail.
Yeah, sure. The first thing, Bill, is any president is going to need someone to advise him, and all president has their cabinets and their advisors. And in this particular case, what I'd like to see is the president establish an advisory committee rather than having a single individual. In the past, most presidents have designated a cybersecurity czar, if you will, a chief security officer of the White House, something like that, to be their main advisor. The problem with that approach is that one individual can't know everything. And so in the letter, I spell out that I'd like a committee, and I actually suggest the 3 types of members of the committee and provide information on why those 3 types of members would be good for the committee.
All right. And what was the second one?
The second topic was really saying, hey, listen, I'm not saying that the laws that we have here in the U.S. are great today, but you got to start somewhere. So we need to enforce our existing laws that we have while we're figuring out what other things, if any, government needs to be doing. So, the bottom line is that laws right now are some of the only things that are compelling some organizations to put security programs in place or to raise their posture. And so let's enforce our existing laws, and that'll buy us some time, if you will, to figure out what's the right thing to be doing going forward.
And I think you touched on federal breach legislation of some sort. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the 48 of our 50 states have their own individual breach notification law. And when Obama in 2015 mentioned in his State of the Union address that he wanted to cybersecurity was going to be an initiative for that year for him, one of the things he'd hoped to accomplish was to actually get a federal breach notification law, which would have superseded the 48 individual state laws. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make that happen before he left office, and as of yet, it doesn't seem to be a priority for Trump. So we don't have a federal breach notification law today, which leaves organizations that do business in multiple states struggling through the alphabet soup of the various requirements of each of the state laws.
Right. So talk about the third point that you made in your letter.
Yeah, the third point, Bill, was hearkening back to the time of the Cold War when President Reagan coined the term trust but verify. And in this day and age, I would tell President Trump, trust no one. We have to acknowledge that I don't care what the Russians say. I don't care what the Chinese say. I don't care what any other country tells him in their negotiations. They are actively funding attacks against the United States, against organizations in the United States, against the government, and we need to make sure that we're not taking that for granted, that we are prepared to defend ourselves against those attacks.
Well, that's great. And the last one, again, not enough to where that they don't go and read the letter. I want them to read it, but at least give them enough information there to make them want to go do it.
The last one was really something that was an observation based on Obama's time in the office. Obama's probably largest contribution to our cybersecurity profession was thought leadership. And ultimately what happened was under his leadership, we had the NIST cybersecurity framework, CSF, that came out. And what I would tell Trump is don't ask for more thought leadership. We don't need people thinking about the newest things that are going to come out in the future. What we need people fixing the stuff we already know about. That's our problem, Bill, is that we need to actually put into action the thought leadership that's already been published.
Well, and that was great stuff, Mark. I really appreciate your time, and I guess we'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
You too.